March 2023, and I know you wanted to discuss a couple things about escrow. What have you noticed that buyers, sellers should know about using escrow in this market?
Certainly. The use of third-party escrows is not that uncommon anymore in Mexico. It's been probably a good 20 years since people have been accustomed to using this, because all the restrictions on monetary transactions with notaries that were serving as escrow agents, basically as independent, neutral parties to the transaction, has really gotten to a point where notaries are not comfortable anymore receiving money from clients. Basically, they are good with receiving money on taxes because they have to. They are under law obligated to calculate and retain taxes on the part of foreigners and even Mexican individuals as well, because the government says, well, if you don't have a fiscal presence in Mexico, we don't trust that you're going to pay the taxes that are required under this closing. So we ask the notary, and we basically don't pay the notary anything as the government, to say you calculate the taxes and you retain those taxes and you pay them on behalf of foreigners or Mexican individuals. When it comes to corporations, they have to do their own accounting, and so the notaries are not required to do that. But what happened was that the notaries, because of different statutes regarding money laundering and all these restrictions, they said, I'm not going to be handling money on the part of, on especially the purchase price. So they are now recommending them themselves not to be escrow agents, because that was the norm. For many, many years, decades, they had that ability, and they would basically jot down, and the wording would be that the sale price has been delivered to the full satisfaction of the seller, and that was the end of that. Now they're requiring to put in actual account numbers, check numbers, where did the money come from, where did the money go, and so they kind of have frowned on that use and said just have another party. So with escrow, in Los Cabos, in Vallarta, in Cancun, these areas that have a lot of traffic as far as sales of real estate go, they're using U.S.-based escrow, which is fine. Normally, when the funds are there, they're just basically parked, right? And you know this from your experience as a broker. You basically have funds parked with a reputable third party, and they just say, just tell me when, where, and what are the amounts, and we basically send out the money. In Mexico, there are a couple of outfits that do escrow in pesos out of Mexico City. So as long as those parties are reputable, you can then deposit funds not only on the purchase price, which is the most important part, right? You give, let's say, the earnest money, and you make that first deposit under a purchase and sale transaction refundable to buyer. Because if the monies go hard at the end of the 30-day due diligence or 45 due date regarding diligence, what happens is, if there is something that does come up through the due diligence, especially in the property registry, let's say there's a mortgage or there's a security interest or attachment on the land, you basically say as buyer, I want my money back. But if the money goes to the seller, you're kind of stuck with, well, why did we use escrow to begin with, right? So as long as that first part of the escrow agreement says that, let's say you use maybe 10% down, that money is refundable. You basically have a period of 30 days to get the money back. And if everything is according to plan and everything is proper with the realty, then you have the money dispersed to seller. And then you're engaged. That provides two things to the seller. One is that you're dealing with a serious buyer. They're paying $750 just to use escrow. And then you have the ability to say, okay, if everything is good, you have a sale right then and there, because they're committed to that percentage. They obviously don't want to lose it because it's going to go hard. And then the other part of escrow is important because they fund escrow probably, normally they want either 5 business days prior to closing, when the notary says, hey, we have all the documents in place, the trustee documents, everything is proper. give me a heads up to fund the transaction. And then they're just waiting for the release of those funds. So when the notary says the transfer title has been completed, here is the escritura number, the deed number, they send a notice letter to the escrow agent saying everything has been completed, send the monies, right? And so that's really what you should be looking at escrow, because if you have an interim disbursement prior to transfer title to seller, you give away the leverage that any buyer should have in the transaction. And I get it, developers and sellers need the money yesterday, but you as the buyer or the buyer should always be looking out for the interest of themselves as the controlling party in the transaction. So afterwards, with the escrow fully funded and having the release, the part that sometimes gets overlooked with the escrow process is the disbursement instructions. So they have to be formalized and signed off right then and there. When the escrow agreement is signed, you have disbursement instructions with basically, the account numbers and this and that, but also the moments where those monies are to be dispersed to the parties and have those signatures on that. And so I just kind of wanted to recap, because the use of escrow has been more common in 2023 right now, 20 years removed.